The package arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, dropped unceremoniously on the porch by a delivery driver who didn't even bother to ring the bell. I spotted it through the blinds, its pristine white exterior standing out against the dusty old doormat Madison insisted we keep despite its frayed edges. On the side of the box were sleek letters. Halo Assistant, Smart Home AI, followed by a tagline that read, For a life simplified. Simplified. That was the promise, but I wasn't buying it. I carried it into the kitchen and set it on the counter, hesitating before I opened it. Truthfully, I'd bought it on impulse. Not because I wanted to automate the lights or control the thermostat with my voice, but because I needed answers I couldn't get from my wife. For weeks, there had been too many late nights, too many hushed phone calls, and too many new habits that didn't feel like her. I'd asked her about it, of course. And each time, Madison had waved it off with that breezy tone she used whenever she wanted to dodge a conversation. "Oh, it's just work," she'd say. Or, "You're overthinking it." But I wasn't overthinking it. I was paying attention. Madison and I had been married for 7 years. In the beginning, everything felt easy. We laughed at the same dumb jokes, supported each other through job changes and family drama, and dreamed about the future like a team. But lately, things had shifted. She'd grown distant, her once open demeanor replaced by a guardedness I couldn't explain. She spent more time on her phone, her screen always tilted away from me. And when I reached for her at night, I'd find her body tense, her warmth almost distant. I'd convinced myself it was just stress. Her job had been demanding lately. But then came the late nights that didn't line up with her usual schedule. The unexplained receipts for dinners I hadn't attended. The faint smell of cologne on her coat, one that wasn't mine. So here I was, standing in the kitchen with a box I shouldn't have bought but couldn't resist. The Halo Assistant was marketed as a smart home AI, promising to make everyday life seamless. What the advertising didn't mention, but I'd discovered in a few well-buried forums, was that the model I'd chosen came with an unadvertised security suite. Hidden within its sleek, unobtrusive design were tiny cameras, microphones, and motion sensors. It was the ultimate silent observer, and I was about to set it loose in my home. Madison came home an hour later while I was halfway through the installation process. I was crouched in the corner of the living room, adjusting the angle of one of the devices. "What's that?" she asked, dropping her purse on the counter and raising an eyebrow. "It's a smart home assistant," I replied, keeping my tone casual. "Figured it'd be useful. You know, lights, thermostat, music, all that." She studied me for a moment, then shrugged. "You and your gadgets," she said, offering a small smile. "At least it'll give you something to tinker with." I nodded, pretending her comment didn't sting. There was a time when she would have been curious, maybe even excited, about something like this. Now, it seemed like everything I did was either a mild annoyance or an afterthought. I worked late into the evening, carefully placing the devices in key spots around the house. Living room, kitchen, hallway, bedroom. Each one was positioned to capture what I needed without being obvious. The AI's setup was intuitive, and by the time Madison went to bed, the system was online. That night, I lay beside her in bed, staring at my laptop screen while she slept. The Halo interface was open, displaying a clean dashboard with multiple live feeds. Each window showed a different angle of the house. The kitchen bathed in soft moonlight. The hallway, empty and silent. The living room, with its faint reflections from the TV I'd left off. I didn't feel proud of myself. I felt like a man crossing a line he couldn't uncross. But the knot in my stomach was louder than my guilt. At 2:17 a.m., Madison shifted beside me. I glanced over, pretending to adjust the pillow, and watched as she reached for her phone on the nightstand. Her face was illuminated by its glow as she stared at the screen, her expression unreadable. A few moments later, she typed something and set the phone back down. I told myself it wasn't unusual. People check their phones all the time, right? But when it happened again the next night, and the night after that, my gut told me it wasn't work or some innocent distraction. By the weekend, I was obsessively reviewing the Halo's recordings. The AI sent me regular notifications, flagging unusual activity. It was nothing definitive at first, a muted phone conversation in the kitchen, a hurried text in the living room, but the tension in her posture told me I was getting closer to something. The more I watched, the more I felt like a stranger in my own life. Each playback felt like peeling back a layer of our marriage, revealing cracks I hadn't seen before, or maybe hadn't wanted to see. And then, on the fifth night, the Halo flagged a notification that stopped me cold. Unusual activity detected, bedroom. The notification from the Halo assistant wasn't something I could ignore. My chest tightened as I clicked on the flagged recording. The AI had tagged the footage as unusual activity, bedroom, 11:32 p.m. Madison and I had already gone to bed by then, or so I thought. The video started innocuously enough, a static shot of our dimly lit bedroom, with Madison's side of the bed empty. She must have gotten up while I was asleep. As I fast-forwarded, the movement tracker highlighted her figure pacing near the foot of the bed. She was holding her phone, the screen's glow faintly illuminating her face. She typed quickly, glancing toward the bed every few seconds as though making sure I hadn't stirred. Then she froze. I rewound, slowing the footage. It was subtle, but her expression shifted, her lips parted slightly, her eyebrows knitting together. Whatever she was reading or responding to, it wasn't casual. It looked intimate. She sat down on the edge of the bed, her back to the camera. The phone hovered in her hands as though she were deliberating. And then she smiled. It wasn't the kind of smile I'd seen from her in months. It wasn't the polite, distracted smile she gave me at dinner or the strained one she wore when we argued. It was soft. Genuine. The kind of smile that reached her eyes. I paused the video, staring at the frozen frame. 1,000 questions raced through my mind, each one cutting deeper than the last. Who was she talking to? What had they said to make her smile like that? The night after I watched that recording, I couldn't sleep. Madison lay next to me, her breathing steady, her hair spilling over her pillow. She looked peaceful, but I couldn't reconcile that with what I'd seen. Was this the same woman who had just a few hours ago been pacing the room, texting someone in secret? The next morning, I took my coffee into the living room and pulled up the Halo dashboard on my laptop. I'd installed the AI to find answers, but so far, it had only deepened my suspicion. I needed more. The Halo's voice assistant chimed softly as I explored its options. Would you like me to analyze patterns of activity? The question startled me. The AI's capabilities were more advanced than I realized. Yes, I said, my voice low. Compiling activity trends. It responded, its tone eerily calm. This will take approximately 24 hours. As I sipped my coffee, my mind wandered back to the Madison I used to know. The one who'd laugh at my dumb jokes, who'd curl up on the couch with me to binge-watch bad reality TV. The woman who'd cry at the end of sappy movies, who made me believe in the kind of love that didn't waver. But that woman felt like a memory now. When Madison came downstairs that morning, she seemed cheerful, too cheerful, like someone who was trying a little too hard to act normal. Good morning, she said brightly, pouring herself a cup of coffee. You're up early. I nodded, forcing a smile. Just couldn't sleep. She leaned against the counter, sipping her coffee as though nothing was amiss. Anything on your agenda today? Not much, I said, keeping my tone neutral. You? She hesitated, her smile faltering for just a second. The usual. Work, errands, might grab lunch with Kelly. Kelly. Her best friend. At least, that's what she always called her when she needed an excuse to leave the house for hours. I didn't buy it anymore. I waited until she left for work to review the Halo's previous recordings. For days, I scoured through every snippet of her activity the AI had logged, her sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, her lingering too long in the driveway after coming home late, her murmuring into her phone in the kitchen, her voice just low enough that the microphones couldn't catch her words. Then I found something that turned suspicion into certainty. It was a snippet from 3 days earlier, captured in the hallway outside our bedroom. Madison was on the phone again, her back to the camera, pacing in agitated circles. "I told you, I can't just leave," she hissed. She paused, listening to whoever was on the other end. "Because it's not that simple, okay? He's suspicious enough as it is. If I push too hard, he'll figure it out." I felt my stomach drop. She sighed into the phone. "Look, I'll figure it out. I need more time." "More time for what?" My hands shook as I closed the laptop, the weight of her words crushing me. I tried to tell myself there was an explanation, that maybe I was taking it out of context. But deep down, I knew better. That evening, I couldn't bring myself to look at her. She asked if I was feeling okay, and I mumbled something about being tired. I wasn't tired, I was unraveling. When I finally opened the Halo dashboard again, the AI's analysis was ready. "Significant deviations detected," the assistant reported. "Would you like a summary?" "Yes," I whispered. It began to list timestamps and behaviors: Madison's increased time spent on her phone, her late-night activity, recurring trips to an address I didn't recognize. An address. My pulse quickened as I jotted it down. If she wasn't going to tell me what was happening, then I'd find out myself. The AI's final message sent a chill down my spine. "Potential external communications flagged. Would you like me to extract audio data for review?" I stared at the screen, my cursor hovering over the yes button. Whatever secrets Madison was keeping, I was about to uncover them. I stared at the blinking cursor on the screen, hesitating. The Halo AI's offer to extract audio data felt like a final step into a place I wasn't sure I wanted to go. But what choice did I have? Every instinct told me that Madison was hiding something that could shatter the life we'd built together. I clicked. "Yes." The AI's voice chimed, coldly efficient. "Audio extraction will take approximately 12 hours. You will receive a notification upon completion." 12 hours. An eternity. I closed the laptop, trying to calm the storm brewing in my chest. Every thought spiraled back to the same questions. Who was she talking to? What was she planning? And why did she need more time? The address the AI had flagged loomed in my mind. I pulled out my phone and searched it, expecting to find an office or a friend's house. But what popped up was neither. It was a boutique hotel. My stomach churned as I stared at the listing. A small, high-end place tucked away downtown, the kind of spot people chose for discretion. I felt sick. The day crawled by. Madison texted me around noon, claiming she'd be tied up at work until late. The message was casual, almost flippant, as if she weren't weaving the lies that were pulling our marriage apart. I replied with a short, "Okay," unable to muster anything more. By 3 p.m., I couldn't sit still. My thoughts kept circling back to the hotel, to the recordings, to the mounting evidence that something was deeply wrong. I grabbed my keys and left the house, the address burned into my memory. The drive downtown was a blur. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter with each mile, my pulse hammering in my ears. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that I wasn't the kind of person who followed his wife or spied on her. But here I was, parking a block away from the boutique hotel and watching the entrance like a man possessed. For 20 minutes, nothing happened. Guests came and went, businessmen with briefcases, couples arm in arm, a family wrangling 2 small children. I felt foolish, sitting there with my heart pounding over what could be nothing. Then I saw her. Madison stepped out of a cab, her dark hair falling in loose waves over her shoulders. She wasn't dressed for work. Her outfit was casual but carefully put together, jeans that hugged her in all the right places, a blouse that showed just enough to make heads turn. She glanced around, almost nervously, before walking inside. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. A minute later, a man followed. He was tall, with neatly combed hair and a sharp suit that screamed money. He walked with confidence, his stride easy, like he belonged there. I didn't recognize him, but the way he carried himself set my teeth on edge. He disappeared into the hotel, and I felt my grip tighten on the steering wheel. My mind raced. Was this the person she'd been talking to? The one who made her smile late at night, who had her pacing in our bedroom while I slept? The idea of them together in that hotel sent a wave of nausea through me. I stayed in the car, torn between charging inside and confronting her or sitting there like a coward. The logical part of me argued for patience. If I stormed in now, I'd only end up with more questions than answers. What I needed was proof. By the time Madison walked out an hour later, I'd made up my mind. She was smiling, her phone in her hand, as she stepped onto the sidewalk. The man followed a few moments later, keeping a careful distance. They didn't speak, but there was a familiarity in the way they moved, as if they'd done this before. Madison got into another cab and drove off. I trailed behind her, keeping far enough back that she wouldn't notice. She went to her office, stayed for an hour, then came home as if nothing had happened. That night, I replayed the footage from the hotel in my mind, dissecting every glance, every movement, every detail. I barely heard her when she told me about her day, her words blending into the background noise of my spiraling thoughts. When she went to bed, I stayed in the living room, waiting for the AI's analysis to finish. The notification came at 11:47 p.m. Audio data extracted. Would you like to review now? I clicked yes, without hesitation. The recording played, crackling faintly before the voices came through. Madison's was unmistakable, soft and familiar. The other voice, a man's, was deeper, smoother, with a tone that made my skin crawl. I told you I couldn't stay long, Madison said, her voice low. I know, the man replied. But I had to see you. This thing we're doing, it's worth the risk. There was a pause, followed by the faint sound of laughter. Not much longer, Madison said. I just need a little more time to figure things out. Take all the time you need, the man said. I'll wait for you. You're worth it. I stopped the recording, my hands shaking. I'd heard enough. The man in the hotel wasn't just a suspicion anymore. He was real. And Madison wasn't just hiding something, she was planning something. The truth was out there, waiting for me to uncover it. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if I wanted to know. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? The recording played in my head on an endless loop, Madison's soft voice mingling with the man's smooth reassurances. Take all the time you need. The words were a dagger, twisting deeper each time I replayed them in my mind. By the time the sun rose, I'd gone from devastation to anger and back again, cycling through every possible emotion. I wanted to confront her, to demand an explanation, but something stopped me. Maybe it was fear that the answers would be worse than my suspicions. Or maybe it was strategy. The recordings, the flagged activity, the hotel, none of it was definitive. If I charged at her with accusations and she denied everything, I'd be right back where I started. No, I needed more. Something irrefutable. The next morning, Madison acted like everything was normal. She kissed me on the cheek before leaving for work, her lips brushing my skin like a whisper. Have a good day, she said, her voice light and easy. I stared after her, watching as she grabbed her bag and headed for the door. She paused, glancing back at me with a small smile. What? She asked. Nothing, I replied, forcing a smile of my own. Just thinking how lucky I am. The lie tasted bitter, but it worked. She grinned, her face lighting up in a way that almost made me doubt everything. Almost. The moment the door closed behind her, I sprang into action. The Halo assistance logs had flagged the address of the hotel, but now I needed more. The AI had access to a wealth of information, some of it borderline intrusive, but I didn't care. I needed it to do its job. Analyze subject movements for the past month, I told the assistant, my voice sharp. Analyzing, it replied, the soft tone a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside me. This process may take up to 48 hours. I cursed under my breath. 48 hours felt like a lifetime. As I waited, I started digging on my own. I went through our joint accounts, combing through every transaction. Most of it was routine: groceries, gas, utility bills. But then I saw it, recurring charges to the hotel, small enough to avoid immediate suspicion but consistent enough to paint a picture. Every week, she was paying for something. A room? A service? My stomach churned as I added the dates to my growing timeline. It wasn't just the financials. I rifled through her drawers, her bags, even her car. I felt like a criminal in my own home, but I told myself it was necessary. If she was going to betray me, then I had a right to know. I found nothing. The lack of evidence should have been comforting, but it only made me more paranoid. Madison was careful, too careful. Her phone was password protected, her emails meticulously scrubbed. If there was proof of her infidelity, it wasn't anywhere obvious. That night, she came home late. I was sitting in the living room, the Halo's dashboard open on my laptop, when I heard her keys in the door. She walked in with a tired smile, dropping her purse on the counter. Long day. She sighed, kicking off her heels. Everything okay? I asked, keeping my tone casual. Yeah, just a lot of meetings, she replied, running a hand through her hair. I'm going to take a shower. She disappeared upstairs, and I stared at the screen in front of me. The Halo had logged her location throughout the day, work, a coffee shop, and, of course, the hotel. The pattern was maddeningly consistent. While she showered, I opened the AI's audio logs. I wasn't expecting anything new, but then I saw a fresh notification, unusual communication detected, kitchen, 9:43 p.m. My heart pounded as I clicked on the file. The audio crackled, and then her voice came through, soft but clear. I can't talk long. He's downstairs. The man's voice was faint but recognizable. I miss you. When are we going to stop sneaking around? She sighed. Soon. I just need a little more time. It's complicated. Complicated how? He pressed. There was a long pause before she answered. Because he's suspicious. He's not stupid, you know. I think he knows something's going on. The man swore under his breath. Then we need to move faster. The longer this drags on, the worse it's going to get. I know, Madison murmured. Just trust me, okay? I'll handle it. The recording ended, leaving me sitting there in stunned silence. Handle it? What exactly was she planning to handle? By the time she came back downstairs, my head was spinning. She smiled at me, her damp hair curling around her shoulders. You're still up? She asked, her tone casual. Just catching up on some work, I said, gesturing to the laptop. She nodded, leaning down to kiss my forehead. Don't stay up too late. As she walked away, I couldn't help but wonder how much of her was real, and how much of it was a lie. The next morning, I decided to take things further. If the Halo AI could log her movements and record her conversations, then maybe it could uncover what she was hiding. Enable advanced tracking, I instructed. The AI's response was chilling. Advanced tracking activated. You will be notified of all deviations. The walls were closing in, and so was the truth. The morning after I enabled the Halo AI's advanced tracking, I felt a strange mix of resolve and dread. The AI was now tuned to capture every detail, every inconsistency. I told myself I was ready for the truth, but the sinking feeling in my gut told another story. Madison moved through the house that morning with her usual efficiency. She made coffee, packed her bag, and kissed me goodbye, all while humming a tune I didn't recognize. It was the kind of morning that might have felt ordinary in another life, but now it felt staged, like a performance crafted to throw me off her trail. Have a good day, she said brightly as she walked out the door. You too, I replied, my voice flat. The moment she was gone, I opened the Halo dashboard. The system had already begun tracking her movements. A small red dot marked her location in real time, showing her car heading toward her office. For the next few hours, I worked from home, splitting my focus between my actual job and the surveillance feed. Madison's movements were typical at first: her office, a coffee shop nearby, and a pharmacy. But then, just before lunch, the red dot stopped moving. The address wasn't one I recognized. It wasn't the hotel this time, it was a park on the edge of town. I frowned, watching as her location remained stationary. Capture audio, I instructed the AI. The system responded immediately, feeding me a live stream from her phone's microphone. At first, all I heard was background noise, birds chirping, the faint rustle of leaves. Then, a man's voice broke through. "You really shouldn't have come here," he said. Madison's reply was sharp. "I didn't have a choice. He's watching me, and I can't risk you being careless." The man sighed. "I've been careful. But this is getting out of hand, Madison. You need to make a decision." "I already have," she said, her tone firm. "It's just complicated." There was a long silence, broken only by the sound of footsteps crunching on gravel. "You said that weeks ago," the man finally said. "I'm running out of patience." "Just trust me," Madison snapped. "I'll take care of it." The audio cut out as the call ended, leaving me sitting there in a haze of confusion and anger. Take care of what? What decision had she made? I was gripping the edge of the desk so hard my knuckles turned white. The man's voice wasn't familiar, but his tone spoke volumes. Whoever he wasn't just some fleeting distraction. He was in this deep with her. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Madison returned home that evening as though nothing had happened, her smile easy and her demeanor relaxed. She asked about my day, and I forced myself to answer, pretending that my stomach wasn't tied in knots. I spent the night sifting through the AI's logs, looking for anything I might have missed. I scanned every timestamp, every conversation, every detail. And that's when I found it, a pattern I hadn't noticed before. The hotel visits, the park meetings, the late-night phone calls, they all lined up with specific dates. And those dates, I realized with a jolt, coincided with the anniversaries of major milestones in our relationship. The day we met. The day we got engaged. The day we moved into this house. It wasn't a coincidence. She was marking those dates with him. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. Those were days that belonged to us, memories we built together. And now, she was sharing them with someone else. I closed the laptop, my hands trembling. I couldn't stay in the house. Not that night. I grabbed my keys and drove aimlessly, my thoughts spiraling. Every streetlight and passing car blurred together, the weight of what I'd uncovered pressing down on me. Madison's betrayal wasn't just physical, it was symbolic. She wasn't just sneaking around. She was rewriting the story of our life together. Eventually, I found myself parked outside a bar I hadn't been to in years. It was a small, dimly lit place, the kind of spot where no one asked questions. I ordered a whiskey and sat in the corner, replaying the past few months in my mind. How had I not seen this coming? How had I been so blind? I thought about confronting her, about demanding answers. But each time I imagined it, I saw her twisting the truth, spinning some story that would make me doubt what I knew. No, I couldn't confront her, not yet. When I got home, it was past midnight. The house was dark, and Madison was asleep. I stood in the doorway of our bedroom, watching her for a long time. She looked peaceful, her face soft in the glow of the moonlight. And yet, I felt nothing but anger. I turned and walked back to the living room, where the Halo dashboard still glowed on my laptop. There was only one way forward. Enable full surveillance, I said quietly. The AI responded instantly. Full surveillance activated. All activity will be recorded and flagged. This wasn't about suspicion anymore. It was about preparation. Madison was hiding something, and I was going to uncover every detail. No matter what it cost. When you choose to dig into someone's secrets, you should brace yourself for the fallout. But no amount of bracing could have prepared me for what I was uncovering. Every new detail felt like another blow, a reminder that the life I thought I knew was crumbling beneath my feet. With full surveillance enabled, the Halo assistant was operating at its most invasive level. Every movement Madison made, every word she said, every call she took, nothing was beyond its reach. It was wrong, I knew that. I hated the way it made me feel, like a predator circling its prey. But it was too late to stop. Not when the truth was so close. The first flag activity came that afternoon. Madison was in the kitchen, her phone pressed to her ear as she chopped vegetables for dinner. The AI had detected abnormal conversational tone, a feature I hadn't even realized it had until now. I tapped the notification, and the audio played back instantly. "I've already told you, I can't just walk away," Madison was saying, her tone hushed but tense. The voice on the other end was faint but clear. It was him, the same man from the park. "You're dragging this out," he said, his frustration bleeding through. "Do you want me to come over? We can figure it out together." "No," Madison snapped. "Not here. He'll know." The call ended abruptly, and I sat back in my chair, my hands gripping the armrests. She was protecting him. She was lying to my face every day, covering her tracks while I pretended not to notice. I watched her closely that evening as we sat down to dinner. She made small talk, asking about my day, laughing at some joke I could barely muster. She seemed relaxed, content even. But I knew better now. Her composure was a mask, one she'd perfected over weeks, maybe months. "Did you see Kelly today?" I asked, testing her. She hesitated for just a moment, so brief it might have gone unnoticed. But I caught it. "Yeah," she said, nodding. "We grabbed lunch. She's thinking about going on vacation soon, somewhere tropical." I forced a smile. "Sounds nice. Maybe we should plan a trip, too." Her eyes flicked to mine, and for a moment I thought I saw guilt. But then it was gone, replaced by her usual easy grin. "Maybe we should," she said lightly. "It's been a while since we've done something just the two of us." I wanted to laugh. The irony of it all was unbearable. That night, I combed through the Halos logs again. The AI had flagged more unusual activity from earlier in the week, a phone call made while she was at the boutique hotel. I hadn't been able to listen to it in real time, but now the recording was there, waiting for me. "Everything's ready on my end," Madison said, her voice calm but firm. "I just need to figure out the timing." "And he doesn't suspect anything?" the man asked. She laughed softly, a sound that sent a shiver down my spine. "Oh, he suspects plenty. But he doesn't have a clue what's really going on." I paused the recording, my heart pounding. What's really going on? Up until now, I'd assumed her betrayal was simple, an affair, a fling, something sordid but straightforward. But this was something else entirely. There was a plan, one I wasn't privy to, and the realization sent my mind racing. What was she planning? And why did I feel like I was the target? I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Madison's face, smiling at me as though nothing was wrong. I thought of the man, his voice dripping with confidence, the way he spoke to her like he knew her better than I did. By morning, I'd made a decision. I drove to the boutique hotel, parking a block away. I'd hoped to remain unnoticed, but the manager's keen eyes spotted me as soon as I walked through the lobby. "Good afternoon," he said, his smile professional but wary. "Can I help you?" "I'm meeting someone," I said, my tone casual. His eyes flicked to the guest ledger on the counter, and I followed his gaze. The names on the list blurred together until one jumped out at me, Madison Harper. My wife's name. "Is there a problem?" the manager asked, his voice tinged with suspicion. "No," I said quickly, stepping back. "No problem at all." I left the hotel feeling worse than when I'd arrived. Seeing her name there, on that list, made everything real in a way it hadn't been before. She wasn't just lying to me, she was living a double life. That evening, I confronted the Halo assistant again. "Summarize activity patterns," I instructed. The AI responded immediately. "Subject demonstrates consistent deviations during work hours. Communications are encrypted. Would you like me to decrypt?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "Decryption will take 24 hours," the AI replied. I sat back, staring at the glowing screen. The waiting was unbearable, but the alternative, doing nothing, was worse. Madison came home late that night, her excuse rehearsed but convincing. "Work's been crazy," she said, dropping her purse on the couch. I nodded, watching her as though seeing her for the first time. Every word she spoke felt like another layer of her mask, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being played. Whatever she was hiding, I would find it. I just wasn't sure if I'd survive the truth. When the notification from the Halo AI arrived the next morning, my hands trembled as I opened the dashboard. The message was short and clinical: decryption complete. Key communications available for review. "Would you like to listen?" I clicked. "Yes," and the audio began to play. The voices were faint at first, but the AI enhanced the sound, amplifying every word. "I can't wait much longer, Madison," the man said. His tone was sharp, more urgent than I'd heard in their previous conversations. "You're cutting this too close. If he finds out..." "He won't," she interrupted. "I've kept everything under control so far. He's suspicious, but he doesn't have proof. And even if he does, it's too late for him to do anything about it." The man sighed. "You don't get it. Suspicious is dangerous. Men like him, they don't just let things slide." "Stop worrying," Madison snapped. "I've got this handled. Just stick to the plan." The call ended abruptly, leaving me staring at the screen, my mind racing. The tension in their voices was palpable, but what struck me most was her confidence. She wasn't just hiding an affair, she was orchestrating something. The words, "stick to the plan," echoed in my head. What plan? I scrolled through the Halo's activity logs, looking for anything that might shed light on what they were planning. That's when I noticed a flagged communication from earlier in the week, a message I'd overlooked in my frantic search for answers. The AI displayed the text in neat, concise lines. Subject: initiated bank transfer on date. Amount: $15,000. Recipient: Michael Investments. $15,000. The number leapt off the screen. I checked our accounts and found the transfer buried among other transactions. Madison had labeled it as property maintenance, but the recipient didn't align with any of our usual expenses. Michael Investments wasn't a property company. A quick online search revealed it was a private firm, one with vague details and no obvious services. It was a shell, a front for something else. My chest tightened as I pieced together the puzzle. Madison wasn't just sneaking around, she was funneling money into something, and it wasn't for our family. By the time she got home that evening, I was a mess of nerves, my mind spiraling with worst-case scenarios. She walked in, her smile as effortless as always, and dropped her purse on the counter. "Hey," she said, leaning in to kiss my cheek. "How was your day?" "Busy," I replied, forcing a smile. She moved around the kitchen, humming softly as she poured herself a glass of wine. "You seem quiet. Everything okay?" I nodded, pretending to focus on the paperwork in front of me. "Just tired." She didn't press further, which only made me more suspicious. Was she playing me, or was she genuinely oblivious to the fact that I was unraveling her secrets? That night, while she slept, I replayed the decrypted audio and stared at the bank transfer records. Every detail added weight to the growing realization that Madison's betrayal went beyond infidelity. There was a plan in motion, and I was somehow at the center of it. I couldn't ignore the man's warning: men like him, they don't just let things slide. What had Madison told him about me? Had she painted me as some controlling husband, someone she needed to escape from? Or was it something darker? The Halo assistant chimed softly, interrupting my thoughts. "New notification, subject activity flagged. Location deviation detected." I clicked the alert, and the screen displayed a live map. Madison's location was marked by a blinking red dot, nowhere near the house. She was back at the boutique hotel. I grabbed my keys and drove toward the address, my pulse hammering with a mix of rage and desperation. This time, I wasn't content to sit outside and watch. If I saw her with him, I'd confront them both. The hotel's parking lot was nearly empty when I arrived. Madison's car was parked in a corner spot, its familiar license plate taunting me. I sat in my car staring at it, my grip tightening on the steering wheel. After what felt like an eternity, she emerged from the building. She wasn't alone. The man walked beside her, his hand resting on the small of her back. They exchanged a few words before she leaned in and kissed him, soft, deliberate, unmistakable. I felt the blood drain from my face. It was one thing to suspect, to piece together clues from recordings and logs. But seeing it in person, watching her betray me so blatantly, was a different kind of pain. I grabbed my phone and started recording, capturing every moment. The kiss, the way they lingered, the way she laughed at something he said. When they finally parted, she got into her car and drove away, leaving him standing by the entrance. He watched her leave, then pulled out his phone, his expression dark. I stayed in my car, staring at the video I'd just taken. This was it, the proof I needed. But as I watched the man's face on the screen, something clicked. He wasn't just her lover. He was involved in whatever plan they were hiding. And he was dangerous. The realization hit me like a freight train. This wasn't just about a broken marriage. This was about survival. The video on my phone was definitive. The kiss, the body language, the laughter, they left no room for doubt. But the betrayal wasn't the worst part anymore. No, what kept me rooted in that car, my hands trembling as I replayed the footage, was the nagging question, what was I really dealing with here? This wasn't just an affair. It was calculated. Coordinated. Madison wasn't sneaking around out of guilt or lust, she was executing a plan. A plan that involved $15,000 transfers, secret meetings, and a man who radiated danger. I drove home in a fog, the city lights blurring together as my mind raced. I'd been operating on instinct, chasing every lead the Halo assistant provided, but now it was time to move beyond surveillance. If Madison had a plan, then I needed one of my own. The first step was learning more about him. I played the decrypted audio again, focusing on the man's voice. He sounded calm, self-assured, but there was an edge to his tone, a subtle threat lurking beneath his words. Men like him don't let things slide, he'd said. Did he know me? Was that why Madison was so careful? Back home, I fired up my laptop and started searching. The Halo had recorded Madison calling him Nathan, and I used that as a starting point. The man had an air of wealth and power, so I looked into local executives, real estate developers, and anyone else who might fit the profile. It didn't take long to find him. Nathan Cooper. A name I hadn't heard before, but one that popped up in connection with several high-profile business ventures. Real estate, private investments, even tech startups, he had his hands in everything. His LinkedIn profile painted a picture of success, with photos of him at charity galas and networking events. But buried in the search results was a news article from a year ago, one that stopped me cold. It was about a lawsuit against Cooper, filed by a former business partner. The details were murky, but the accusations included fraud, embezzlement, and even intimidation. The suit had been dismissed under mysterious circumstances, and the partner had relocated. Shortly after, my stomach turned as I read. This wasn't just some smooth-talking stranger. This was a man with a history of deceit and destruction. A man who operated in shadows and left chaos in his wake. I scrolled further, finding photos of him at events Madison had attended through her work. That's where it had started then, at one of those networking nights I'd beg off, too tired from my own job to play the supportive husband. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. Madison wasn't just entangled with him, she was funding him. The $15,000 transfer made sense now. It wasn't property maintenance. It was a buy-in, a contribution to whatever scheme he was running. But why? What did she think she'd gain from all this? The Halo AI chimed softly, breaking my train of thought. New activity detected, it announced. I pulled up the dashboard, my pulse quickening. The notification was flagged as critical, unusual communication, encrypted call, subject, Madison Harper. The Halo had captured the audio, but the encryption made the voices distorted. I instructed the AI to begin decrypting, a process it estimated would take several hours. The waiting was unbearable. I paced the living room, staring at the clock, feeling like every second was another opportunity slipping away. Madison was in bed, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath our roof. She'd said she was tired, giving me a quick kiss on the cheek before retreating upstairs. I wondered if she was dreaming of him. By the time the audio was decrypted, it was nearly 3 a.m. I clicked play, and the conversation unfolded like a nightmare. "You have everything you need?" Nathan's voice was unmistakable. "Yes," Madison replied. "But we need to be smart. He's been digging." Nathan cursed softly. "I told you not to underestimate him." "What's he found?" "Not much," she said quickly. "But he's suspicious. He's not letting it go." There was a pause, then Nathan spoke again, his tone colder than before. "If he's a problem, we'll deal with him. You just focus on your part." I clenched my fists, my body rigid as the call ended. "Deal with him." The words echoed in my mind like a gunshot. They weren't just planning to run off together. They were planning to neutralize me. Suddenly, everything snapped into focus. The careful lies, the financial transfers, the secret meetings. It wasn't just about money or infidelity. They were building a trap, and I was walking straight into it. I needed to act, but I couldn't let them know I was onto them. My every move had to be calculated, my every word measured. I had to let Madison believe she was still in control. The next morning, I sat across from her at breakfast, watching her sip her coffee as though nothing was wrong. "Busy day today?" I asked casually. She glanced up, her smile perfectly rehearsed. "Yeah, a few meetings. Nothing exciting." I nodded, forcing a smile of my own. "Well, let me know if you need anything." She didn't notice the way my gaze lingered on her. By the time she left for work, I was already making calls. A lawyer. A private investigator. Even the bank, to lock down our accounts. If Nathan Cooper thought I was a problem now, he had no idea what was coming. I spent the day moving carefully, like a soldier laying mines in enemy territory. My suspicions about Madison and Nathan weren't just paranoia anymore, they were fact. The audio recordings, the financial transactions, the hotel meetings, it all pointed to one inescapable conclusion. Whatever they were planning, I wasn't just collateral damage. I was the target. But I wasn't going to sit back and let it happen. The first call I made was to a private investigator, a grizzled man named Garrett who came highly recommended for cases involving corporate fraud and domestic disputes. When I explained the situation, he let out a low whistle. "Your wife's playing a dangerous game," he said. "And if this Nathan Cooper is involved, it's bigger than just an affair." "I need proof," I said, my voice steady despite the anger simmering beneath. "Concrete evidence that ties them both to whatever they're doing." "You'll have it," Garrett replied. "Give me 3 days." The next call was to my lawyer. I didn't want to believe it had come to this, but I couldn't ignore the possibility that Madison might try to drain our accounts or leverage our assets for whatever scheme she and Nathan were running. I needed to protect myself before they could pull the rug out from under me. "Freeze the joint accounts," I instructed. "And draft papers for full financial disclosure. I want a clear picture of where every dollar's gone over the past 6 months." The lawyer hesitated. "Are you considering filing for divorce?" "Not yet," I said, though the word felt like a bitter pill in my mouth. "But I need to be ready." By the time Madison came home that evening, I had everything in motion. Garrett was already digging into Nathan's background, and the lawyer had assured me the accounts were secure. All I had to do now was wait, and play my part. Madison breezed through the door, her smile as effortless as ever. "Hey, sorry I'm late. The meeting ran over." "No problem," I said, keeping my tone light. "Dinner's in the oven." She glanced at me, her eyes narrowing slightly as if she sensed something was off. "You're in a good mood," she said, almost suspiciously. "Just glad to see you," I replied, walking over to kiss her on the cheek. It felt like an act of theater, every gesture and word carefully scripted to keep her from realizing how much I knew. We ate dinner in relative silence, her scrolling through her phone while I watched her with feigned indifference. My mind was racing the entire time. Did she know the accounts were frozen? Had Nathan warned her about my digging? Or was she still under the impression that she had the upper hand? After dinner, she said she had some work to catch up on and disappeared into the bedroom. I stayed in the living room, the Halo Assistant's dashboard open on my laptop. The AI had flagged another encrypted call from earlier in the day, this one longer than the others. The audio played back clearly. "This is taking too long," Nathan said, his frustration evident. "We're running out of time." "I know," Madison replied, her voice tight. "But I told you, I have to be careful. If he gets wind of this before we're ready, everything falls apart." Nathan scoffed. "You're giving him too much credit. He's not as smart as you think." "You don't know him like I do," she snapped. "He'll figure it out, and when he does, we're both screwed." There was a pause, then Nathan's voice softened. "You're scared." "Of course I'm scared," Madison admitted. "This isn't just some fling, Nathan. This is my life." Their voices faded as the call ended, leaving me gripping the edge of the table. She was scared. Good. She should be. The next morning, I met Garrett at a small coffee shop on the edge of town. He slid a manila folder across the table, his expression grim. "Cooper's got a lot of skeletons," he said. "Fraud, embezzlement, ties to some shady offshore accounts. But the kicker is this." He tapped the folder. Inside were photos of Nathan meeting with a man I didn't recognize, exchanging what looked like a thick envelope. "Who's that?" I asked. "Arthur Vance," Garrett replied. "Low-level enforcer with a reputation for making problems disappear." The weight of his words hit me like a physical blow. Nathan wasn't just a con artist, he was dangerous. "Does Madison know about him?" I asked. Garrett shrugged. "Hard to say. But if she's tied up with Cooper, she's in over her head." That evening I returned home with a renewed sense of purpose. Madison greeted me at the door, her expression bright but strained. "How was your day?" she asked, her tone casual. "Uneventful," I lied, smiling. She didn't seem convinced, but she let it drop. Later that night, I watched her sleeping, the faint glow of her phone illuminating the nightstand. For years, I'd believed we were a team, partners in every sense of the word. Now I wasn't sure if I was looking at the woman I loved or the enemy. Whatever they were planning, whatever trap they thought they were setting for me, I wasn't going to fall for it. The net was closing, but it wasn't around me. It was around them. By the time the day of reckoning arrived, I was ready. Every piece of the puzzle had fallen into place, the transfers, the meetings, the lies. Garrett's investigation had uncovered more than I'd imagined, and the lawyer had ensured my financial defenses were ironclad. The Halo Assistant continued to provide real-time updates on Madison's activities, each one reinforcing the inevitability of what had to happen next. I knew their plan now. It wasn't just to take the money. Nathan Cooper had a history of cleaning up his messes, and I was the mess they wanted to sweep away. Madison's fear in the audio recordings wasn't just guilt. It was the realization that she'd partnered with a man who wouldn't hesitate to cross lines she never thought she'd have to face. But she'd still chosen him over me. It was time to end it. That morning, Madison left for her meetings, the lie rolling off her tongue as easily as ever. I kissed her goodbye, pretending not to notice the tension in her posture or the way she avoided my gaze. "You're sure you'll be home for dinner?" I asked casually. "Of course," she said, smiling faintly. As soon as she was out the door, I made my move. I drove to the boutique hotel, parking a block away and slipping inside through a side entrance Garrett had identified. The manager barely looked at me as I made my way to the elevators, my heart pounding with every step. Garrett's photos had shown which suite Nathan favored, and I timed my arrival carefully to coincide with their usual midday rendezvous. When I reached the door, I hesitated for just a moment. My hand hovered over the handle, and I took a deep breath, steadying myself. Then I opened it. The room was immaculate, the kind of sterile luxury that felt more like a showroom than a place where people actually lived. Madison was seated on the couch, her back to the door, while Nathan stood by the window, his phone pressed to his ear. They froze when they saw me. "Good morning," I said, my voice cold and even. Madison's eyes widened in shock, her face draining of color. "Henry, what are you?" "Save it," I interrupted, stepping inside and closing the door behind me. I turned to Nathan, who was already slipping his phone into his pocket. He didn't look surprised, just annoyed, like I'd inconvenienced him. "You must be Nathan," I said. "I've heard so much about you." He smirked, his confidence infuriating. "And you must be Henry, the husband." "That's right." I took a step closer, my gaze locking onto his. "The husband. The one you've been trying to screw over for months." Madison stood, her hands trembling as she tried to insert herself between us. "Henry, please. This isn't what you think." "Don't," I said sharply, turning my attention to her. "You've been lying to me for months." "Do you really think I'm stupid enough to believe anything you say now?" Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Nathan, meanwhile, crossed his arms, his smirk widening. "I have to hand it to you, Henry. You're a persistent guy. But you should have stayed out of this." "Out of what, exactly?" I shot back. "The scheme to steal from me? The plan to run off with my wife? Or the part where you planned to deal with me when I got in the way?" That wiped the smirk off his face. "Yeah," I said, stepping closer. "I know all about it. Every phone call, every text, every bank transfer. I've been watching you both for weeks. And now, I've got enough to bury you." Nathan's confidence wavered, but he quickly recovered. "You think you're in control here?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. "I don't think," I replied, pulling my phone from my pocket. "I know. Because unlike you, I'm not sloppy." I pressed play on the audio recording, the one where Nathan had talked about dealing with me. His voice filled the room, cold and unmistakable. Madison's face crumpled as she listened, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Henry," she whispered, "I didn't mean for this to happen." "No," I said, my voice shaking with fury. "You didn't mean for me to find out." Nathan lunged forward, but I was faster. I stepped back, holding up the phone like a weapon. "Don't even think about it," I warned. "The recordings, the evidence, I've sent it all to Garrett. If anything happens to me, it goes straight to the police. And believe me, they'll be very interested in your little history of fraud and intimidation." He froze, his hands clenched into fists. "You've lost," I said, my voice firm. I turned to Madison, my heart breaking as I took in the woman I'd once loved. "And you? I don't even know who you are anymore." Tears spilled down her face, but I felt nothing. Without another word, I walked out of the room, leaving them to deal with the wreckage of their plan. By the time I got home, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. I'd sent everything to the lawyer and filed for divorce the same day. Madison tried to call me, but I didn't answer. Whatever love I'd once had for her was gone, burned away by the weight of her betrayal. The truth had destroyed everything, but at least now, I was free.